Hi, Naomi back for another video. I know I said I wasn't making no more videos, but I really always need to consult the Spirit before I make those determinations. And so I kind of feel like the Spirit wants me to share this, so I may or may not put this video up, because I do have some that I don't put up. But I may end up putting this one up. But everything that I have been showing and sharing with any who have actually watched the videos and tried to piece together what I've been telling you, it all for me came by way of the Spirit, and it came through the words in here, studying the words and the passages. Everything that I came to understand and that I've presented to you, and that comes by way of talking about the daughters of Zion, and that there is one daughter to be revealed in the earth, and she's the second half of the Messianic Godhead that the Bible speaks of, that she is called the strong right arm of God, that she is daughter Zion that sits to the right hand of Christ in the book of Psalms 110, chapter 110, how Adam rejected a covenant with the righteous spirit represented by Eve and chose a covenant with the whore spirit, and how these two covenants are shown to us in Galatians 4, how two women represents two covenant, one a whore spirit, one a righteous spirit. Isaiah 59 then tells us that Mother gives the Spirit in covenant to teach the words. And that's what these daughters of Zion's jobs were. And we come to understand that the righteous daughters, known as the daughters of Zion, are called the key of David. And these whore spirit daughters who these men went up to, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, because Scripture does actually interpret Scripture on this. And it shocked me when I realized that that's exactly what I was looking at. But how these men went up to these women on Mount Zion, Mount Hermon, that's what it's looking like, right? And made a covenant with them. And these are called your fallen angels. They are not male, they are female. And they are called the daughters of Zion. These particular ones that they chose. Alright? Now, I'll show you that if I get the chance. If not, I may make a part 2. This may end up being a long video. So what I shared with you, okay, all about the key of David, the key of Solomon, how they're in total opposition to one another, and how the key of David actually represents the queen. The key is the queen to it all. And how that key Christ came to claim, and it was laid upon his shoulder. She's called the government. She's the ruler. She's the rightful ruler, rejected out of her rightful place, this daughter of Zion. Okay? Now, I had no idea that, that everything I've been saying could be confirmed in one text. I had no idea of that. And like I said, everything that I have shown you on these daughters and on this one queen that is yet to manifest in the earth, I have found in this Bible. I have found through words, studying the words, being in communion with the Holy Spirit, to allow her to teach me all truths. And it's come from there. And so last week I was talking to the Spirit, and I was down on my knees, and I said, I really need you, because you doubt so much. It's just our nature in this flesh, we doubt. I said, I really need you to confirm this for me. And so the first thing she told me is she wanted me to study the fourth kingdom in the book of Daniel. And the reason why I say she did that is because she kept taking me to it and to it and to it. And it was always the fourth kingdom. And I said, well, okay, you want me to study the fourth kingdom in the book of Daniel. Did I say David? I mean Daniel. And I said, well, I looked at it, and I went into all the words, and I said, I'm failing to understand what it is that you want me to see. And then she said, go get your book of Apocrypha. Now, I have a copy of the Apocrypha, I have a copy of the Septuagint, and I have a copy of the Old Father's writings. All right? I forget what that one's called. And so I picked up the Apocrypha, and I said, oh, okay, if you want me to study the fourth kingdom, then you're going to have to show me where it is in this book, because it doesn't have chapters laid out. It has chapters, but it don't have no titles, doesn't have no information. It's a very hard book to understand. And when I opened it up, it opened right up to the fourth kingdom of Daniel. I'm not lying, I'm telling you the truth. It blew my mind. And I said, okay, you are definitely telling me what I believe you're telling me. And so I began to read. And I began to try to understand what it was that she wanted me to understand. But I kept reading. And then it goes back to me asking the Spirit this question. I need you to confirm that what I have come to understand in the Word is actually the truth. So I'm going to read you corrupted text. I discovered this last week. I've had these books for a while, and I began at the very beginning. This is way in on page like 396. But when I opened it up. I just grabbed it and I opened it up and I said, you want me to study the fourth kingdom, you're going to have to show it to me. And so I opened it up and it took me to page 391 of this particular book. So it's a long ways in on this book. You see? You see how far in it is? It's a long ways in. All right? And I kept reading and the fourth kingdom come up. It come up into play. And I looked at it. And I looked at it, and I kept reading. And it was what I discovered when I kept reading. All right? Now, what I'm about to read you is considered corrupted text, okay? It's considered a book that you may get information out of, but you shouldn't really count on it as being part of the truthful canon, right? We know what those books are. So, I don't know if anybody understands this or not. But in 1611, when our first King James was put out, it included the book of Apocrypha right in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. So all of these books that today are no longer included in our Bible, our King James Bible, was originally there between the Old and the New Testament. They had been included. So about 200 years, if I'm remembering my history right, and I may be remembering it wrong, so don't hold me on this to be 100% true. But I believe I remember reading that about 200 years after the King James, they removed these books, the Apocrypha, from the King James, citing cost, publication cost, for the reason for removing it from between it. That's what they cited. Now, if I'm remembering it correctly, that's what I believe they cited for the reason for the removal of them. But they were there in your original 1611 King James, okay? And the books was your first and second Esdras. I don't know how I'm saying, but that would be Ezra. First and second Maccabees, Tobias, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, Susanna, Prayer of Azariah, which also went by the name of Song of the Three Children, Prayer of Manasseh, and Bel and the Dragon. All right? And I have another one here, Laodiceans, but that's not there. So these books that I just read off were considered as part of the Apocrypha that was included between your Old and New Testament on your original 1611 King James, which was then removed about 200 years after that, based on cost, because of the cost of it. That's what I'm remembering it as. Now, what blew me away about everything that I have been showing you in all of my videos was this one chapter absolutely confirmed everything. And I don't know if this is the reason why she wanted me to look into the fourth kingdom, because she knew it would lead me to this. I don't know. But we know that the Spirit moves in mysterious ways. And so I'm going to read you this chapter. And it's in 2nd Ezra. Yeah, Esdras. So it's 2nd Esdras. And it's chapter 13. And I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read what it says. But I'm going to change the man in this to a woman. Because based on my understanding and my studies for the last 5, 6, 7 years, on what I've been showing you in all of these videos, based on the word that I have found out of here, this is absolutely a woman. Absolutely. All right? They want to put a man everywhere. Everywhere's a man. Everywhere. There's no woman anywhere. And yet, that's what's in this creation. One male, one female. And they want to keep shoving us out of it. They want to keep shoving us out of the picture. Well, they're not going to. And this chapter, I have to believe, is not corrupted. You see, what I believe is the Vatican, I shouldn't say the Vatican, okay, a religious organization got a hold of the original copies of these books, like the Book of Enoch, like the Book of Jasher, and etc., etc. And they took them in, and they changed them, and they needed to continue on that idea of the subjugation of women, and yes, I'm going to hit on that. And they needed to keep her head down. They needed to keep her head shoved down, which meant removing the appearance of wherever the feminine showed up in her place. And it meant assuring the fact that all of their texts correlated in that particular area. They absolutely needed that to correlate, keeping the feminine's head shoved down. So they took these texts, they corrupted them in many parts, and put them back out for mass consumption. The problem is once you understand the truth through this, through the words, that you're actually going to find confirmation in these so-called corrupted texts. Okay? What I call corrupted texts. So I'm going to read you 2nd Esdras, or Ezra, chapter 13. And for anybody who's actually watched all of my videos, you're going to see the truth in this one chapter of what I've been saying. And it blew me away. I only found this last week. I only discovered this last week. All right? And it just shocked me. So, like I said, I'm going to change the man here to a woman. All right? That's the only thing I'm going to do. So, verse 1, and they do have them labeled as verses. So we'll go chapter 13, verse 1. After 7 days I dreamed a dream in the night. And behold, a wind arose from the sea and stirred up all its waves. Verse 3. And I looked, and behold, this wind made something like the figure of now it says man. I'm going to say woman. All right? Made something like the figure of a woman come up out of the heart of the sea. Now that means out of the people. She come up out of the people. And I looked, and behold, that woman flew with the clouds of heaven. And wherever she turned her face to look, everything under her gaze trembled. Verse 4. And whenever her voice issued from her mouth, all who heard her voice melted as wax melts when it feels the fire. Verse 5. After this I looked, and behold, an innumerable multitude of men were gathered together from the four winds of heaven to make war against the woman who came up out of the sea. Verse 6. And I looked, and behold, she carved out for herself a great mountain, and flew up upon it. Verse 7. And I tried to see the region or place from which the mountain was carved, but I could not. Verse 8. After this I looked, and behold, all who gathered together against her to wage war with her were much afraid, yet dared to fight. Now understand, again, this is the daughter Zion who strikes through her enemies in the day of her wrath. And she sits to the right of Christ in Psalm 110. Okay? Verse 9. And behold, when she saw the onrush of the approaching multitude, she neither lifted her hand nor held a spear or any weapon of war. We need to understand where our real power lies. Our words, our tongue, our sword, right? Verse 10. But I saw only how she sent forth from her mouth, as it were, a stream of fire, and from her lips a flaming breath, and from her tongue She shot forth a storm of sparks. Now you have to understand here that we're speaking in allegorical terms. So it goes on later on to tell us exactly what this fire is, and this is exactly what I said it was. I was absolutely right, and I'm pretty sure I said it in one of my videos. So I knew exactly that that's what it was alluding to. And it comes right out in this so-called corrupted text, and it tells us exactly what it is. All right? What this stream of fire is. Verse 11. Although these were mingled together, the stream of fire, the flaming breath, and the great storm, and fell on the onrushing multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them all up, so that suddenly nothing was seen of the innumerable multitude, but only the dust of ashes and the smell of smoke. When I saw it, I was amazed. Verse 12. After this I saw the same woman, not man, come down from the mountain, and called to her another multitude which was peaceable. Now it tells us who this multitude is when we get reading further. Verse 13. Then many people came to her, some of whom were joyful and some sorrowful. Some of them were bound, and some were bringing others as offerings. Then in great fear I awoke, and I besought the Most High, and said, verse 14, from the beginning thou hast shown thy servant these wonders, and hast deemed me worthy to have my prayer heard by thee. Verse 15, now show me also the interpretation of this dream. Verse 16, for as I considered it in my mind, alas for those who will be left in those days, and still more, alas for those who are not left. Verse 17, for those who are not left will be sad. Verse 18, because they understand what is reserved for the last days, but they cannot attain it. But alas for those also who are left, and for that reason. For they shall see great dangers and much distress as these dreams show. Yet it is better to come into these things, though incurring peril, than to pass from the world like a cloud, and not to see what shall happen in the last days. I will tell you the interpretation of the vision, and I will also explain to you the things which you have mentioned. Now we're on to verse 22. And as for what you said about those who are left, this is the interpretation. She who brings the peril at this time will herself protect those who fall into peril, who have works and have faith in the Almighty. Now you know what I see in that verse? This is verse 23. I see Isaiah 42. She's no longer restrained. And she says, now will I go forth as a travailing woman. And she says, I'm going to beat the mountains small. But then she says, I'm going to lead the blind in paths that they have not known. I'm going to lead them in a way that they have not known before. So I see that passage in Isaiah 42, this verse. He, actually is she, who brings the peril at that time will herself protect those who fall into peril, who have works and have faith in the Almighty. So you're looking at the Spirit, who is the deliverer, who delivers, births, redeems. All right? Verse 24. Understand therefore that those who are left are more blessed than those who have died. Verse 25. This is the interpretation of the vision. As for your seeing a woman come up from the heart of the sea, this is she whom the Most High has been keeping for many ages. There goes my computer. Let's get that up and going again. Just give me a few minutes here, folks. It may take me a few minutes till I see it. Oh, right, there we go. It's back again. I'm back again. Okay. She come up from the heart of the sea. This is she whom the Most High has been keeping for many ages, who will herself deliver her creation. And she will direct those who are left. Now, we've been discussing that it was daughter Zion who created this creation. It was hers from the beginning. She was the righteous spirit, denied her rightful place. And it says she will direct those who are left. She'll lead them in paths not known. That's what she'll do. Verse 27, and as for your seeing wind and fire, and a storm coming out of her mouth, and as for her not holding a spear or weapon of war, yet destroying, see, she's still managing to destroy her enemies, yet destroying the onrushing multitude which came to conquer her, this is the interpretation. Behold, the days are coming when the Most High will deliver those who are on the earth, and bewilderment of mind shall come over those who dwell on the earth. I think we have quite a bit wrong in our final in-game theology. And there's going to be a lot of bewildered Christians out there when they realize that things aren't quite going to happen the way that they have it in their mind. A daughter has yet to appear. You're not going to worship you're not going to worship an image that's false. And that is clearly understood in the book of Daniel, which we already discussed. Okay, so we're not going to go into that. And they shall plan to make war against another, city against city, place against place, people against people, and kingdom against kingdom. They're doing that today. And when these things come to pass and the signs occur, which I showed you before, then my daughter will be revealed, whom you saw as a woman coming up from the sea. And when all the nations hear her voice, every man shall leave his own land, and the warfare that they have against one another, and an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as you saw, desiring to come and conquer her. Now we get that idea also in one of the chapters in Micah, and it says they desired to, let me look it up before we finish that. It's in the book of Micah. Okay, I think it's chapter 2 or 4 is where you'll find it. When we get there. Okay, Micah 2. No. So it must be chapter 4. Okay. It says, right here, it does. It correlates to what's being said here. This is Micah 4, verse 11. Now also many nations are gathered against thee. This is against the daughter Zion. That say, let her be defiled, and let her eyes look upon Zion. That's just what that verse practically said there. And when all nations hear her voice, every man shall leave his own land, and the warfare that they have against one another, an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as you saw, desiring to come and conquer her. That's what it says, right? And that's what it says there. Let her be defiled, but they know not the thoughts of the Lord. Woo! That's in Micah, the last 3 verses. It says, but they know not the thoughts of the Lord, neither understand they her counsel, for she shall gather them as sheaves into the floor. Verse 13, arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I will make thine horn iron, and I will make thy hooves brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people, and I will consecrate their gain unto the Lord, and their substance unto the Lord of the whole earth. Ha ha! There it is in the book of Micah. And that's lining up just with what that says right there. So we'll continue on in that chapter. I got a cup of coffee here. Look at that. Excuse me, I'm going to drink. I already had a cup of herb tea. Trying to get off coffee. Alright, so what did it say? And an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as you saw, desiring to come and conquer her. Conquer who? Daughter Zion. Ha! But she shall stand on the top of Mount Zion. Look at that. And Zion will come and be made manifest. She's going to manifest in the earth to all people, prepared, and listen to this, built. Prepared and built. Why is that a good word for us to look at? Because when you go into the creation of Eve, who would be representing your daughter of Zion, your rightful ruler, your queen over earth, it says she was built. You know what I think it means? It means the government was built. All right? She was the spirit given in covenant with the word to build the nations. All right? Her and these daughters of Zion, who are your queens over each kingdom. All right? And then there's the one queen that they're under, and the high priest, kingly priest. That's what we're looking at. All right. So look at that. Prepared and built. All right? That's found in verse 36 of this 2nd Ezra 13. As you saw the mount carved out without hands. So let's read that verse again. And Zion will come and be made manifest to all people, prepared and built, as you saw the mountain carved out without hands. When I hit that, that was just like, whoa! Right there, just what I've been saying. It's Mount Zion. It's these daughters who grow into a great mountain in the earth, and there it is in this corrupted text, supposedly. And it's telling us what that mountain was in the book of Daniel chapter 2. It was Zion. Now, they probably already told you that. I don't know. But I'm basing it on everything I've been shown about these daughters, and that they are your government, they are your rulers. They were denied their rightful place in the very beginning, out of whom there is one, who is the queen, the bride. It's not many, it's not multiple, it's not polygamy. God doesn't base her heavens, his heavens, on polygamy. Fallen man does, because it exalts him. And that whore spirit. So, verse 37, and she, my daughter, will reprove the assembled nations for their ungodliness. This was symbolized by the storm. Now we're coming up on it. What this storm of fire really is. And we've been talking about it in our videos, which is just amazing confirmation for me. Verse 38, this is it. And will reproach them to their face with their evil thoughts and the torments with which they are to be tortured, which were symbolized by the flames, and will destroy them without effort by the law. That's what it says, which was symbolized by the fire. Now, I said in a prior video that the lightning and the fire represents the law. And the law is what's going to destroy and take down this old creation, really. And we've been talking about how the law shapes this sinful flesh. We've been talking about that. And there it is, right there. This whole thing confirms what I've been saying. Just this one chapter. And I just found it. And I've been studying these passages and these words for many years now. And I have laid them out for you. And here it is, confirmed in one chapter. It just blew me away. So we'll keep reading. And as for your seeing her gathered to herself another multitude that was peaceable, here's the peaceable multitude. And again, it hits on what I've been hitting on. These are the 10 tribes. These are the 10 tribes. Israel, the daughters, which were led away from their own land into captivity. And they were. I've been studying that. I've been finding so many passages that alludes to the fact of what they did to these rightful rulers called daughters of Zion, and how they did. They killed them. They ripped them open, ripped their babies out of them. They put them into captivity. Just anything to really get them out of the land. The righteous daughters who was called Israel. All right? The feminine is called Israel. The masculine is called Judah. That's typically how it runs. Although the bigger picture of Israel is of Eve, who was set apart, right? And made holy unto the Lord. Mother of all living. The deliverer. Your rightful deliverers, your rightful rulers, who will grow into a great mountain, are your daughters of Zion, which is the key of David laid upon his shoulder, which is daughter Zion that sits to the right of Christ in Psalm 110. We verify that there are three. They're separate three lords from that chapter, Genesis 18, when we get looking into it. So here we go. These are the 10 tribes which were led away from their own land into captivity in the days of King Hosea, whom Shalmaneser, the king of the Assyrians, led captive. He took them across the river, and they were taken into another land. Now, I often look at that, the last week that I've looked at that, and I've often thought it should actually say ocean and not river. But I'll let you be the judge. But they formed this plan for themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the nations and go to a more distant region or land where mankind had never lived. Now, I've heard already stories on this years ago. There was a Jewish man who talked about how the priests, the Levites, had been took and had been they're secluded away in an unknown land, and a water that'll spring to life or something on the 7th day or Sabbath day, do something, I can't remember. Anyway, I remember watching a video on it. But I don't think that's what it's talking about. It's talking about these daughters of Zion literally being removed to a land, I think, over an ocean. And I think they landed up in North America. That's what I think. That's just my thoughts. And they went in by the narrow passages, and of course they're going to fill it in with details to encourage you to think in their direction. So they have passages like this in here. And they went in by the narrow passage of the Euphrates River. Okay. For at that time the Most High performed signs for them and stopped the channels of the river until they had passed over. Well, again, I'm seeing in my video that I speak of the earthquakes actually bringing the land masses back together and allowing us to literally pass into what is Mount Zion. I don't happen to think it's even the one that they got named today. I actually think they've got that wrong, possibly. But we won't go into that. Through that region there was a long way to go, a journey of 1.5 years. Well, 1.5 years journey. That's a mighty large crossing, in my opinion. And that country is called Azareth. Verse 46, then they dwelt there until the last times, and now, when they are about to come again, the Most High will stop the channels of the river again, so that they may be able to pass over. This goes to my video, the woman's mantle, and the rising up the daughters of Zion. Therefore you saw the multitude gathered together in peace. These daughters are peaceful, but they possess great power, and they possess it through the word. Which is the rightful law of heaven. And that gives us great power once we understand where our real power lies, which is in the spirit of truth. But those who are left of your people who are found within my holy border shall be saved. Therefore, when she destroys the multitude of the nations that are gathered together, she will defend the people who remain. And then she will show them very many wonders. That would be her daughters. I said, O sovereign Lord. Now, that's a title, sovereign Lord, when you get studying your Bible for Adonai, 136, which we've identified as daughter Zion. So I said, O sovereign Lord, explain this to me. Why did I see the woman coming up from the heart of the sea? And she said to me, just as no one can explore or know what is in the depth of the sea, that's in the people, in the sea of people, so no one on earth can see my daughter or those who are with her except in the time of her day, at her appointed time. This is the interpretation of the dream which you saw, and you alone have been enlightened about this, because you have forsaken your own ways. That means removing yourself from everything you think you know and letting the Spirit lead you, right? That's what this says. Because you have forsaken your own ways and have applied yourself to mine and have searched out my law. Right? For you have devoted your life to, it says, wisdom, and I'm going to say, to mother, and called understanding, it says your mother, no, your sister. That's actually in Proverbs. It says call wisdom and understanding your kinswomen. All right? And they're real women. All right? It's not just a trait. The wisest person on earth is female, not male. They'll have you believe it's a male. No. No. It's female. Therefore I have shown you this, for there is a reward laid up with the Most High, and after 3 more days, there's that three days, I will tell you other things and explain weighty and wondrous matters to you. Then I arose and walked in the field, giving great glory and praise to the Most High because of her wonders, which she did from time to time, and because she governs the times and whatever things come to pass in their seasons. And I stayed there 3 days. Wow. That's my confirmation. I'm hitting on it. I'm getting it right. So I'm going to say some of this corrupted text is bang on. It's right, except for the gender change, which they had to make sure they get these copies and corrupt the text in the manner that they need it to. Now, I'm going to share a few other things with you. I think I got a little bit of time left on this video. And one of the things is I've been studying Zechariah 11, and I couldn't understand the voice on it, right? And only when I put on the voice of the Queen, daughter Zion, being rejected here on Mount Zion out of her rightful place as the Queen, did that chapter begin to make sense. So I would encourage you, if you want to understand Zechariah 11, you put daughter Zion on that. And it says she takes to herself 2 staffs. And one she writes her name on, not a male name on. She's the daughter Zion. She's the rightful ruler that was given in covenant to mankind with the words, with the laws of heaven, which was rejected. And the second one, she writes her inheritance on it. And she's found snapping both of these staffs, representing her breaking her covenant with him. And Jeremiah implores her not to do that. And you find that in Jeremiah 14:21. Jeremiah says this, for the sake of your name, and it's written on one of those staffs, do not despise us. Do not disgrace your glorious throne. Remember, there's that word remember, your covenant with us, and do not break it. Now, he is talking to the daughter Zion there. He's talking to the spirit that was given in covenant to mankind, which was rejected by the first Adam for the war spirit. Now, when you get looking at the corrupted text, the book of Enoch, we're told, I think it's the book of Enoch anyway, that 200 fallen angels made an incursion on Mount Hermon and took unto themselves wives whom they chose. Well, now we have a recount in Genesis 6. All right? And I am going somewhere with this. And we're told in the Bible, all right, when you read Genesis 6, for anybody who doesn't know what it is, it talks about the fallen coming down and taking wives whom they chose, all right? And they largely look at that as that event in the book of Enoch. Many people believe it that way. But many believe that it's just the sons of Seth and the daughters of Cain, you know, always painting those daughters as wicked and the sons as good. That's always your image. And God's a male who's got to put, again, the female in line. It's never a female against a female or a male against a male. It's always a male against a female. And that's to cause subjugation. That's to build up that Baal image, which is a false image that you see these daughters smashing on the toes and bringing that false image down, because it's really a queen that rules the planets. On every planet, every garden is ruled by a queen, and then under her many queens, and then the almighty queen. Now, in chapter 6 of Genesis, like I said, you go and you read that, and there's different interpretations on it. But most says, well, it's those fallen angels, those 200 angels who made an incursion on Mount Hermon and came and took wives, and then they taught them witchcraft, taught them every nasty thing there was in the world to teach them. Well, if we hearken to what the Bible says Scripture will interpret Scripture. And yet nobody's ever hit on any passage that would interpret Genesis 6 until you begin to look at things in the proper way, all right? Which is the way that we've been looking at them in these videos. There is a passage in the Bible, and probably more once I get looking through, but I just hit on this last week, based on the current theology that I'm teaching. And that is Isaiah 57. Isaiah 57 is the interpretation of what took place in Genesis 6, which is the interpretation of what they tell you these 200 angels did. Well, let's understand what Mount Hermon is. Does the Bible tell us the location of Mount Hermon? Yeah, it does. And it comes right out and it tells it to you. So let's go to Deuteronomy 4, and I'm going to show it to you. Plain as day. No denial. So we'll go to Deuteronomy 4. I hate that I never have it marked, but that's me. Okay, Deuteronomy 4, verse 48 says this. From Aroer, which is by the banks of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Sion, which is, what does it say? Hermon. So Mount Hermon, which is Zion, is the location that the fallen came down on. That's what it's saying. So what did we just come to realize was the difference between the key of David and the key of Solomon? Well, the key of David is the righteous daughters of Zion. But the key of Solomon was these whore daughters, these fallen daughters on Mount Zion, that these men took to wife. All right? Rejecting the righteous spirit, and they took them in covenant. Now, watch what Isaiah 57 says about this. This is absolutely lining up. This is absolutely lining up for anybody who can reason with the Spirit. Where am I going again? Isaiah 57. And I know I'm leaving things out that I wanted to talk about. But watch what Isaiah 57 says. And it's ridiculous. Because it'd have you believe it's women looking upon men being turned on by their privates. That's what some of the interpretations actually have to say here. Now, who looks at whose privates and gets turned on by them? Come on, you're not going to shift this one around. What does it say? Isaiah 57. It says, and we'll look at verse 7. And this is where all of the transgression took place, on Mount Zion, under the law that they were causing to be replaced by the whore spirit, in covenant with these men who wanted to be built up as gods under this law. That's what we're looking at. That's what this is all coming down to. Verse 7. Upon a lofty and high mountain hast thou set thy bed. What high and lofty mountain? Mount Zion. Mount Hermon. Your interpretation of Genesis 6. Even thither wentest thou up to offer sacrifice. This is a male doing this. This is not a female. Thou have you believe it's the female doing it. No. Verse 8. Behind the doors also and the posts hast thou set up thy remembrance, for thou hast discovered thyself to another other than me. Well, what were we talking about circumcision represented? Well, Abraham had to circumcise himself as part of this covenant made to Mother Yahweh, showing that he would not go to the whore spirit and make a covenant with her, but that his covenant was with Mother Yahweh and with her daughters of Zion, the righteous spirit. That's what that symbolized. That's why the men had to be circumcised. Get it? So here we have here, and it is daughter Zion speaking, for thou hast discovered thyself to another than me, and art gone up. Thou hast enlarged thy bed, and made thee a covenant with them, with the whore daughters, with those so-called fallen who came down and chose wives and taught them witchcraft. No. We see the true picture right here. In Isaiah 57 of what really took place on Mount Zion. That's what we're seeing. And thou lovest their bed where thou sawest it. Now many of the translations here will say they looked upon their genitals. And they'll have you believe It's females looking upon male genitalia getting turned on by it. Sorry, that one just don't fly with me. It just does not fly with me. It sounds more like men looking upon female genitalia. That's what it sounds like to me. And thou wentest, is this to the king? No, went to the queen with ointment, and did increase thy perfume, and did send thy messengers far off, and didst debase thyself even unto hell. Well, we go to hell now. Why? Well, some of us do, or we would have. Because Adam made a covenant with death. Now, we're told in Isaiah 28 that, actually we're told it in a different passage. I wrote it down. I ain't going to be able to locate it that quick though. But it says in so many words. Yeah, it's in Habakkuk chapter. Just give me a minute here, folks. I'm going to run out of time. It's in Habakkuk 2. Probably not. Yeah, I'm probably too far now. Just give me a second. Okay. But in Habakkuk 2, and I believe it's verse 6. I wrote it down. Yeah, it's past that. It says, oh, come on. Yeah, it's Habakkuk 2:6. I didn't write that down. But we're going to go in. And if I forget my train of thoughts, forgive me here. But in Habakkuk 2:6, it says this of Adam, I believe, of the men under the law. Habakkuk, come on. Where are you? Nahum, Habakkuk 2:6. It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. He built himself up with riches. It says under the law, with power under the law. Literally manifesting as clay, as strength. All right? And it states, when you get breaking those words down, that he took out heavy loans, heavy debts in order to do this. And those debts is what comes due in Isaiah 28, and he is unable to repay them back. And Mother says, oh, they're going to come in and they're going to collect. Because you made a covenant with death. And now you can't pay up. You can't pay up. But by the way that you were always intended to pay up. You make a covenant with death, you die. And that's that overflowing scourge that they think, oh, well, we have a covenant with them. They're not going to touch us. But they do. Because his debt comes due. And he is unable to repay with anything more than his actual life existence. That's what this is all saying. All right. So he went up. They went up to these whore daughters, to these fallen. That's what they were on Mount Zion. Right? And we talked about the keys of David and the key of Solomon. That's what we talked about. And how all of this is connecting us together. How it every bit all correlates. I know I was going somewhere else with that. But there you have it. They made a covenant with these whore daughters on Mount Zion. That's what they did. And they changed the law. And in Zechariah 11, when you begin to understand that it is daughter Zion who breaks her covenant, and then what does she do? It says she takes her mantle and she goes, I believe, to the high priest, and she says, what was my services worth to you? What I did for this nation, what was it worth to you? And I believe she may well have actually had a physical mantle with her, and it was probably very fine, a very beautiful, very richly embossed garment called a mantle. And she says, pay me what you think it's worth. And so they pay for her this mantle that they thought was worth. She says they paid a goodly price for it, for this mantle, which was her services, which was then this physical item, I believe, also this mantle that she actually wore that identified her as the queen. And then when they rejected her, she breaks her covenant with them. She tries continually to lead the kings, but they just will not listen to her. They will not hearken to her. And so she says, I break my covenant with you. This is the Spirit breaking her covenant. And it is the daughter Zion that does that. And so she breaks these staffs, signifying that she's breaking her covenant with them. And so she takes her mantle, she sells it, and she gets a goodly price. She says 30 pieces of silver. And Mother Yahweh tells her, you take those 30 pieces of silver and you cast them to the potter's house. Now the potter house is your creator, and that's Mother. And what Mother intends to do actually is to create a much grander mantle for her daughter. Because you hear daughter Zion say, when these daughters, these children begin to return to her, she says, who are these? And Mother says, these are yours. These are all your children now. She says, I'll give her her vineyard back to her. But she's confused because it says, more are the children of the desolate than of she who has a husband, it says. And Mother says, these are yours, and you will now wear them as a bride adorneth herself with her jewels. So these children represent her jewels, her gems, restored to her by the Mother Spirit who cut out Christ. All right? And so she says, who are these? And she says, it is a little thing that you should only be the light to Israel. She says, now will you not only be the light to the Israelites, which was that second staff that she broke, representing her inheritance. She breaks it. But now she's not only given the inheritance of Israel, she's given the inheritance of the Gentiles. And she says, you will not only be a light unto the Israelites, you will now be a light unto the Gentiles as well. So the 30 pieces of silver that got cast to the potter's house ends up being a much more lavish and larger inheritance than this daughter Zion could have ever imagined. That's what we're looking at. I don't care what anybody says. That's what all of this is leading us to. Every bit of it. And all you have to do is study it. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I know there was another passage I wanted to share, but I'm going to skip that one for now. And I just wanted to show you the verifications just in this past week that the Spirit has shown me that I have been led by the Spirit in this word to show me exactly what's about to take place. And it is the standing up. And she says to her daughters, stand up, pick up your head. And it says, study to show thyself approved. Not unto man. You don't go unto men. You go to God. You go to the Spirit. Get down on your knees. That's what you need to do. And I just wanted to share this verification because it was huge. It was huge to me. And for the few people out there who may have picked up this theology and has begun to understand what I'm trying to tell you, that we're not departing until you see the manifestation of the daughter of Zion. And she is one, and she is the bride of Christ. She is called the key of David. And if you're trying to follow your lineage through the key of Solomon, you're following it through these fallen. The lineage of the daughter of Zion absolutely is indicated in the Bible as coming through the lineage of Joseph and Ephraim. That's where she comes through. And she's called the key of David. And that means she's Christ's manifesting spirit on this earth, who builds the house, the law, the truth that governs the entire earth. And she's called a queen. And so thank you for letting me share that with you. I hope you get something out of this video. I hope you're going in and maybe trying to retrieve some of these passages for yourself it really begins to build. It really does. And so may the Lord bless my dear brothers and sisters out there. I don't want to offend anybody, but it says that these daughters are going to cause people to feel bewildered, to feel goaded, maybe anger. And these are all requirements. You know, when you think of the myrrh tree, Christ was found standing in a valley amongst the myrrh trees. Those myrrh trees are these daughters. And when you get looking at the full meaning of myrrh, bitterness, Mara, Ruth says, call me not. Naomi says, call me not. Naomi, call me Mara. People has this idea that means bitterness. It means strength. And it took all of this oppression to strengthen these daughters of Zion to pick their head up and to begin to question it all. And that's what we're looking at. So again, I love my brothers and sisters. Hope I said something that made sense and will help you in your studies. And may the Lord bless you all.